Hey, I'm the composer and poet Andrew Lloyd Fry, and this is an introduction to my poetry book, Some Things Scattered Around. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how this book came about and the background story behind it, and some of the themes running through the book and some of the process of creating it, and just highlight a couple of the poems. So this book has a bit of a odd origin, and I feel it's very similar to my journey into classical music and composing, where it's just like, how did I get here? How did I end up here? And it's just this kind of weird backdoor, unexpected way that I got to this place. So it started with when I started releasing music, like classical music, and doing concerts and stuff like that. I made a conscious decision to brand myself as a composer / poet. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to that was my way to just draw attention to the lyrics. So I write my own lyrics, and that's not common in classical music. Often you're setting text, like you're taking other poems or something like that. And for me, writing words and music has always been like the pinnacle of like my expression and my art. So it was just this conscious decision to in one word draw a lot of attention to the lyrics, and that I wrote them. So it's like Andrew Lloyd Fry, composer, poet. And over time, I mean, it's almost like that identity was more fully accepted because I was telling other people. And it was almost like I didn't fully know that about myself or accept that about myself. But now that I'm like telling other people, it's like, oh wait, like I am that. I can accept that identity. And there's a lot of weird emotional stuff going on with like identity and art and artist, and saying like, oh, I am an artist, I am a composer, I am a poet. And there's just like a lot of weird like embarrassment, shame around that. So anyways, it was this season of accepting that like identity about myself, and even just realizing things about myself that I hadn't noticed, and realizing like even when I'm not reading poetry, I really come alive when I'm reading or someone's speaking, and it has that like poetic flavor. And if it doesn't have that, I'm just like, it's just hard for that to like speak to me. And it's just kind of looking back over my life, realizing that the poetic expression was like a definitive piece of my personality. So anyways, that was kind of working on me for a while, and it's like, well, if I'm a poet, let's write a poetry book. So that's how it started. And I mean, so for years, I mean, I'm writing music with words, and that had been very prevalent, like 20 years of doing that. And that had been just like a lot of my practice with words. And I had very sporadically just written away from music and just written straight poetry. But it wasn't like my main thing. So the idea was like, okay, well, I've written some poetry over the last, decade, and let me just go through that, pick the good stuff, and write a couple more, and boom, I got a book. So the title, Some Things Scattered Around, is kind of my way of saying like no theme. And I really typically like to work with these like overarching themes of like, this whole piece, I'm exploring this idea or these couple ideas, and it's very much like my art goes on this journey, and it's like, well, because of this, now we're here, and that leads to this. And the title, Some Things Scattered Around, is just kind of like, it's just like, here's some standalone stuff, so there's no overarching theme. Now, I started that, and then it was a season of just really intense, like reading a bunch of poetry and like writing a lot. It was like a year where it was just like, that was really, really front and center for me. And I just kept writing, and I kept writing, and eventually when I went to kind of select poetry for the book. Very, very little of that original poetry that I had already written made the cut. So it's like 2 poems in the whole thing. So I just kind of wrote the whole thing. So that's how it came about. Now, this is a poetry / photography book. So every poem has a corresponding image that goes with it. So my brother is the photographer for this book, and surprisingly, we just worked on our part completely separately. So there was no like communication, like, you know, here's the poem, make something that fit that. It's just kind of like, you do photography things that seem interesting to you, and I'll write the poems, and then we'll pick the ones we like the best and match them together. And super surprisingly, I mean, a lot of them are like super connected, and I paired them with ones that made sense. But in hindsight, it's super surprising how much the image does seem to reflect some of the symbolism in the poetry. The other thing is a lot of the images are just things that he kind of like found. So he lives on some land and goes on a lot of walks, and just like kind of finding random things in the forest and stacking them up and photographing them, which is really fitting for the title, Some Things Scattered Around. So to get a little bit more specific into the poems, so again, there's no overall theme, and it's just like, okay, I'm just writing poems. But when I went to organize them, they were kind of falling in some pretty like neat and tidy categories. So I kind of grouped them in those categories, and again, that wasn't intentional. That's just kind of at the end, looking back, that's what I saw. So, and it ended up kind of being like a body, soul, spirit category. So it's like the first category being like more the physical world, and often like more nature focused, and kind of like the things we can see and experience with our senses. And the second one is more like ideas and emotion. And so it's kind of like the invisible world, but like we can feel it and we're like experiencing it. And then the last one being the spiritual plane. Like the idea of like who I would be without God, or stretching to connect with love and share that with other people, and things like that. So if you are interested, this book, Some Things Scattered Around, is available on Amazon. It's in the link, and thanks for watching.